And so this is an episode of Discharged and Unfiltered. 3 vets having a conversation about stuff that vets talk about, whether it makes sense or not. So today we are going to have kind of a more structured talk about how vets can get hired out of the military. We're going to have a guest. I think I kind of botched that one, but we're going to leave that conversation for another day. Again, I'm JJ Hardy. We have John, and hopefully you guys see the same thing I see. And then we have Trevor down here. Hopefully I'm pointing at Trevor.
You got to put me on the bottom, huh?
Yes.
I thought you said you liked the bottom.
How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? I got my water here and I'm ready to talk about some weird stuff.
Is that what we're calling it now, JJ? Is water?
Water.
It's good water.
It's in a mason jar.
It is in a mason jar.
Is it that Russian potato water?
Yes. Yes.
Well, coffee is technically flavored water too, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Technically. Bean juice, whatever you want to call it.
Exactly.
So, what do you guys think about helping vets get hired and hiring practices? I'm going to start off by saying that, there is more to getting hired than throwing applications to the wind and praying that somebody gets back to you. Trevor, you're an expert on this.
I have a lot to say about this topic, especially since two of my most recent guests, one is a project manager who hires project managers and works on coaching people to get into the space. And then the other one was a former a retired HR exec who spent the time talking about HR and what HR does and does not do, dispelling some myths and stuff like that. But ultimately, the game has changed from what I've seen with HR and interviews and all of that amalgamation of things. It used to be your resume is what got you in, numbers, metrics. That's what everybody cared about, right? That's what we were always coached on. Now it's about stories, narratives, being able to explain, fill in the gaps of telling the stories of, increased revenue by 50%. Okay, well, you got to explain what that revenue increase by 50% was, because 50% of $500,000 or 50% of $5 is a massive shift.
50%.
Well,
50%.
It is, but the thing is that if you can't explain what that bullet point means and tell the story around the value add of it, the metric falls on deaf ears, because if you're reviewing resumes, you're seeing metrics on top of metrics on top of metrics.
Yeah.
The story is what stands out to that metric to tie that to the person.
Well,
yeah, but I'm going to say right now, too many organizations don't even know what they're asking for. So It briefs well, and, we lost Trevor. Look, he ran away. And so these things brief well, but most of these HR folks and these hiring managers are very actually lost into what they, one, actually need, and two, what's realistic in the world. I don't know if you guys saw it a few days ago. I did that post straight from Yahoo Jobs. They needed a senior developer with 10 years Claude code experience.
So,
yes.
So I can top that, actually. I can top
terrible.
that one with a post that I saw. And I don't remember if I sent this to either one of you, but there was a veteran recruiter, like he runs his own company helping vets find jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And the hook was, until they heard he was a Navy SEAL, he was rejected.
wow.
Oh, yes, you did send that to me.
I did.
Yes.
I saw that. I saw that.
And the comments were the best part, because I tastefully wrote that just because this person, well, we'll assume it's a he, because he was a Navy SEAL, does not qualify him for anything other than being a SEAL and SEAL related tasks. Bouncing a ball on your nose.
No. It makes him an author, a movie director. It makes him practically the president. So
it means he's got amazing hair too.
Yes.
But my point was, what about the three of us on this call right now? Because we weren't because we weren't special operations, are we less than?
Yeah.
We're the majority of the population of military veterans.
Yeah.
We've got a very wide dispersion here of Army vets, but fill in the blank of everybody else. And the thing that I wrote was, what was it, his resume that got him auto-rejected? What got him auto-rejected in the first place? And then the words, he was a Navy SEAL, changed the story. Is that all that it was? Was there more to this? Where was the failure in the first part that you needed to jump in and do that second part? And what are we saying to the veteran community if that's what your hook is and that's what your post is?
So I'm actually gonna, for this post particular that you're talking about, I'm gonna say this is actually going into what JJ was saying in terms of telling the story, or you were saying, about telling the story, but right, no one put that on. He didn't put that on his resume, Navy SEAL. Or you know what? Maybe he did. But that means if he was getting auto-rejected with it, that wasn't the hook. But if it came after the fact, that means he was talking to an HR person or a hiring manager or someone in that chain, and that's how he got brought up to the interview, which goes back to that storytelling. You have to tell the story. I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think this dude is just full of fluff and nonsense. But, right, there's also a delusion on the other side that if you're a pilot or a Navy SEAL, you're the best thing since sliced, or a general officer, you're the best thing since sliced bread, not realizing that those, yes, they're great. Yes, they're elite, the pilots and the SEALs and the SF dudes and the generals, but they actually manage such small teams. And that's where it gets lost, because they hide behind these big arbitrary numbers, but that's not what they impacted. And then you talk about your average squad leader, your average, what do they call them in the Navy, chief petty officers, who are actually dealing with 40, 50, 60 plus people at any given moment. They're the ones truly leading. They're the true middle managers that corporate America equates to, but their stories fall on deaf ears because, well, you're more than the 200,000 SF and pilots out there.
Well, you're missing one thing, and I can speak to this personally because I ran into it like a buzzsaw about 15 years ago. And the narrative has changed, but combat arms, particularly infantry, were viewed as less than, and as, are you going to go be a cop or a security guard?
Yeah.
Like what other skills did you learn being combat arms? John, you were Cav, so I don't count that.
I mean, still more combat arms than the artillery and the MPs and the.
Well, what's interesting is after you get inside of these companies, you always hear people say that the one thing you can't train is leadership. It's really, really hard to train leadership, but you can teach anybody a job. And so if that's really what most of these people in these companies truly believe, then why are they holding so firm and filtering everybody out with this application tracking system before anybody even gets to have a conversation?
Oh, can I touch on? Can I go in, because I actually have information about this?
Please.
One of my guests, Kayla Kiha, she's a recruit. She works as a PM. She coaches candidates, and she was also hiring PMs for the law firm, for the law company that she works for, the legal company. And she said she was actually researching ATS systems.
Okay.
And she said that what they will do is they will rank their candidates based off of the categories that you define. And I've got a whole short about how she said they break it down. And then she said, odds are I'm going straight at the top with the most relevant to my posting. And then I'm going down. And if you opt out of the sorting, I think because it's AI based, assuming, if you opt out of that, you're in a completely separate bucket. And she's like, I might get to you by the time I've exhausted everybody else who's at a certain tier and above. And then I might go to the well over here if you opted out.
Well,
but see, I don't have a problem with that on big companies. Where I have the problem with is now you have, again, and it's going back to my original comment of, you have people making these job postings who don't even know what relevant is and what they actually need.
Oh, yeah.
And you know this, you've seen it, right? We need a senior dev. or we need an entry level or mid level dev with senior dev experience, but at intern price. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. And they throw these arbitrary keywords and buzzwords, and then we're using this AI tool to filter out these AI made resumes, because the only way to be competitive now is to have a resume that's been assisted with AI to get through the ATS systems. So like, it's AI talking to AI and hope I threw the most buzzwords out there and high-fived you, right?
Yeah.
Here's one for you. JJ, you know Steven Sopko.
Yes, I do.
He told a story on my show, and I'm not trying to keep plugging guests of my show, but these are all relevant stories.
Well, sure.
Where he was talking about, at one point, like 15 years ago, him and somebody else had to come up with a job description for a new role. Him and this other person argued over the things that were important, and those things never made it in. It was all of the stuff that the two of them could agree on were the inconsequential parts of the role. Fast forward about 15 years later, someone comes to him and says, "Hey, I'm looking at this company. And he's like, and the role." It's like, "What's the role again? Send me the job description for that." Yeah. It was the same description that was just as irrelevant now as it was 15 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And
actually, go ahead.
And I was just saying, we talk about job descriptions. John, you've looked at PM roles.
Mm-hmm.
How different are they usually from one company to another? Like, you could take off the identifying information.
Company name, and they're pretty much all the same.
Exactly. Like, they're always all the same. And I think that job descriptions themselves are a lost art form, because I don't think it's laziness. I think it's that people don't understand what the recruiters and HR team are told. Hey, we need a PM. Mm-hmm. So they go to the well, they find the listings of their past roles. Then they go to the market and see what's available and see, okay, that looks good. But they have no idea they never actually talk to a PM to find out what's important.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree with you, because that's literally what's happening. I mean, we see it in real time, the copy paste job postings, the stuff that's not relevant. And again, this is not necessarily foul to the HR team or the hiring, individuals, but it's, if you don't even understand what's required in your own role, why are you doing such generic stuff and then filtering 95% of your candidacy?
That's
so
true.
Well, if you're going to be generic, then give everyone a chance. And here's what I want to challenge these people for. There are enough things on your resume in today's world that you could test for through interview, right? So you don't have to go the generic route. Oh, I'm proficient at, you need 20 years proficiency at Microsoft Excel. Actually, I'm gonna promise you this. I've used Excel for 20 years. I know probably 3 kids who have used Excel for 2 years who will blow me out of the water.
So what you're saying is you are not proficient.
I done did gooder.
We're presenting
for that. Why are we hiding behind arbitrary numbers? Is what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
15 years experience here, 20.
But let's shift the conversation here.
Okay.
Because we're doing a lot of complaining, which is what vets are great at.
Oh, I love complaining.
I know. I hear it all the time from you, John. But let me ask this then. We talk all the time about the problems with the hiring system, the problems with the ATS, the problems with all these different things. And one thing I want to highlight about that guy and the Navy SEAL and everything was they did the backdoor approach. They went in, they found the person that they needed to talk to. And what we're talking about when we talk about networking, building relationships, connecting, whatever term you want to use, it's not when you need it. It's doing that stuff proactively so that when you need somebody to ask for help, you can. Because
they don't teach that.
Well, because think about this. Let's say I want to go work for Apple. Apple is a notoriously impossible place to get into, right? At least working in the corporate side. I can go work at the Apple store and retail if I want to. But if I spend 6 months scouring LinkedIn, finding people that work for Apple, finding people that work in the PMO at Apple, building those relationships, making friends, and then I wait for that role to pop up at Apple and say, there it is. I've got two to three advocates that odds are somebody knows somebody who can get my resume to the person who's sitting on the desk who's going to interview for that role. And then that person will send a message over to the HR team and say, flag this application when you see it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, guys, we actually do have a couple questions that have popped up here. We have quite a few people watching our stream today. But this one, we're all going to have fun with this one. Why do qualified veterans still get overlooked despite having such valuable skills? This is probably not a veteran asking this question. If you are, Mac, then I apologize for getting that wrong. But we all have our own opinions on this. And we also have some not opinions that we've heard from actual HR people. So I'd like to open up the floor on that.
I'll let Trevor start this one because Trevor's have.
Well, let's start with define qualified, because I'm a project manager by trade. I've got a lot of certifications and diplomas and stuff. They're on my wall behind me. They look really pretty. But if I'm going for a role in executive management and I've never been an executive manager before, guess what's going to happen every single time? I'm not getting it. But if I'm looking for that PMO lead role, if I go to a smaller organization where the title means more to me than the pay rate does, that's where I'm going to start to get that title and build that credibility so I can step up to a bigger organization over time. Like, qualified is, I think it's a smokescreen in a lot of ways, because we say, oh, well, John, you know this, every military person is a PM. And it drives me insane when they say that, because every military person I've met that's got their PMP and I talk to them about real world project management, they look at me like I'm speaking a foreign language, and it's not the same. And that's the problem, is the gap between knowledge and skills and translating those over to the real world versus the military is in and of itself a massive leap that we all have to learn how to make.
And that's another thing, is that's the first thing I was going to mention, is that there really isn't a whole lot of education. And I can't remember what the website is that they give you when you go through TAPS on how to translate your military experience into civilian experience. That only tells part of the story, and it says what you're good at, what types of jobs you would translate over to. It doesn't teach you the language and how to storytell with what you've done briefly in a resume to get something in front of other people to get that job. And I think that's where that's probably the biggest hurdles that a lot of veterans, it doesn't matter if you serve 2 years or 30 years, that we have it, because we speak a different language than corporate America.
But you know what? I'm going to push back a little on that. I agree with you, JJ. However, we don't fully speak a different language. There's plenty of even on paper, there's plenty of consistencies, right? And a lot of, when I coach my veterans, because we know one thing is for sure that we all agree on: veterans, we don't know how to write a resume because we never had to do it. Like, if you realistically think we never had to write a resume, you did your board packet, you did your thing, you high-five someone, you didn't stutter your way through the board, and you're good. Or for you Air Force nerds, you just test it out and called it a day. But we in the military, when you start thinking about evaluations, actually do speak corporate America. We speak about people, we speak about time, we speak about money, right? We've heard it in different contexts, but it's still the same. What did you do? Who did you impact? How did you do it? What was your time frame? What were your results, right? Quantify and qualify. So it's the same. It is the same language. Now, there is those nuance of like, okay, well, I was on the ship doing this. How does that translate to corporate America? And now that's where we got to start playing that game. I will say what hurts a lot of veterans on the resume piece is actually one of two things. Either your stuff is so bland and so generic, the first thing you're looking at is, did you try? Or it's so beautiful and so pristine and so tailored to the job that you couldn't tell me what this actually says because you slapped it through AI. And not that doing that is inherently bad, but if you don't actually know what it says and what it translated, you've over-tailored.
That goes back to storytelling. And one thing, I've done this exercise with so many people, is demilitarize your language. Because I had somebody tell us, I was in a networking call, and somebody told the story, like we were doing our pitch session, our pitches and stuff, and somebody told a story of how he was a EMT in the military and did this whole training story and everything. I said that was amazing. Meant nothing to the civilian. Now take out every reference of the military, every reference of soldier, every reference of anything to do with the military. And I made him redo it. And while he was bumbling and babbling and figuring it out on the fly, because he had to change languages, it sounded 10 times better. Because what we do in the military, we fail to, like, I had a whole speech about what the responsibilities of a jump master were in the English language to show management of a high priority, high risk environment. When somebody would ask me, what was the biggest accomplishment you did in the military? And I'd say, because as a jump master, I was responsible for inspecting equipment, for life safety of 64 paratroopers. Then I was responsible for getting on the aircraft, controlling the aircraft with those 64 high risk individuals. And then I had a whole thing that I would do for about a minute long speech of making a jump master sound like a superhero. And then at the end, I would say, have you ever watched a video of the paratroopers jumping out? And they'd go, inevitably, someone would nod their head and go, yeah. I'm like, you know, that guy at the end that's controlling the traffic? That's the jump master. And everyone's like, that was the light bulb moment of everything that I had just talked about went off in their head of, oh, that's what that is. Yep. And being able to explain it in a way that they understood it. And it also made an impact of what I could do for their organization.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you said that, Trevor, because that is the key. And I think Leia, I hope I'm saying that right. Leia Film Law, you know, she's putting in some comments in there, and she had a question about this, like how can veterans better communicate transferable leadership skills during the interviews? And I think you're hitting to that, right? It's being able to, one, speak that language, but again, it's giving that visual. What did I do, and how is it impactful? But how is it meaningful to the organization you're talking to, your resumes for, or the group you're talking to, right? So we can talk about paratroopers, but most people are going to be like, you're speaking Greek to me. So straight to Trevor's point.
Or even better is, I've heard this before too, with operators and stuff and people like that get interviews just because the managers are curious to talk to a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
You know, they want to talk to them. They want to hear the stories, but they're not interested because you've got to bite. You've got to get their interest. You've got to get them to bite.
Yep.
You know, it's no different than content or anything else we do. You got to get the hook to get the attention. And then if you can't keep their attention, nobody cares.
Well, and I think that, Trevor, you could talk to this more than me or John probably could. I've learned a lot about it being a business owner myself, but as far as networking on LinkedIn or I mean, there's really no networking on Indeed or anything like that. But if you find a job somewhere, how to network with somebody, and I've helped a couple people with this, but I think you're a lot better at it than I am, where, you know, you don't just apply for a job and hope. This is one thing that they don't teach us is that you network within that company, and you touched on it towards the beginning of the live stream here, but you actually have to find the people in the roles that will help you find out more about the position instead of asking for an interview. You got to actually build a relationship and then say, oh, you told me about that job. I mean, is that something that I would qualify for, or whatever the case may be, after you've already established the relationship and these people trust you enough to say, well, maybe I can put you in contact with the right person at the company, or whatever the case may be, because it's not the same as it used to be, where you can just walk in the door, ask to speak to the HR manager. Some places it might be, but everything is digital. They want to go through their layers of protection
but you can
before you get to the hiring manager.
But you can ask to speak to the manager, the hiring manager, or the recruiter. You have to know where to look.
Correct.
Because I really enjoy telling this story, not because it ended well, because it should have just as easily ended horribly wrong. But when I was living in Tennessee, me and my family decided to move to Kentucky. And I don't know anybody professionally in Kentucky. So I went out there and I started, and this is back 7-8 years ago. So the landscape was a little bit different, but I had a message typed out where I would say, hey, my name is Trevor. And it was tailored to what I was searching for. If I was searching for Army vets, it was, hey, we spent time in the Army. I did time in the 82nd. I'd love to talk to you and get to know you a little bit better and find out what you're up to. If it was we went to the same college, hey, War Eagle, hey, how's it going? Let's connect and let's chat about going to Auburn and hear about what you're doing. I sent one to a military recruiter, and I hit the jackpot because her son was named Trevor. He was going into the Army to be a Ranger, and she was also the glue that held the military community together pre-COVID of Louisville, like the who's who. So she put out a mass email blast saying, hey, here's Trevor. He's moving to Kentucky. Here's his resume. Here's his background. And then left it to me. And I've responded to each person individually. And I said, hey, I want to talk to you. Exchanged a few emails. Then I said, hey, let's get on a call. I want to hear about what you're up to. I want to hear about where you work. I want to hear about what you're doing. Then people would inevitably refer me to somebody else. And through, I don't even know how many chains of referrals, I wound up on a call with the hiring manager for Booz Allen Hamilton saying, yeah, we need a PM. Let's talk to you. And you came highly recommended by this person. And I wound up with a full relocation package. They sponsored my security clearance and an offer in hand prior to even moving and setting foot in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I also had another opportunity at a different organization that, through connections, said, this job is an internal posting, but send me your send in your resume. I'll have my assistant schedule an interview with you. And I wound up saying no to that because I had already accepted the other offer. But this is how the world works with this type of environment. But it was a lot of work. It was a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of conversations to get to get that right referral. So a lot of people give up when the awkwardness hits, when it's I have to figure out, how do I start a conversation with someone I don't know? How do I ask for that phone call? What do I do on the phone call when I have it? Because I'll tell you, the first thing you don't do is you don't call up and you don't get on the phone and say, I'm unemployed. Can you help me?
Yeah.
I totally agree. And the other thing is, when you're networking on LinkedIn, especially, there are two things that my own personal pet peeves when you need help. If we've connected and we've had like zero real conversation, and then now you just applied for this job and you want me to help refer you in, I'll be like, dude, I don't even know who you are.
I can beat that. I can top that.
No, hang on. Let me give you my other pet peeve. My other pet peeve is, if we did just connect and you did apply for a role and you want help, I'm all about it. I'll help you. But if the first thing you do is you send me this War and Peace thing, telling me your life story and all this, and how do you feel? You glazed over and I'm moving on. Like, I get it. Sometimes you found the job and then you found me after the fact. You found Trevor after the fact, and you're like, hey, listen, I was going after this job. Here's what I did. Keep it to the point. Just be like, hey, look, I know we just connected. I applied for this job. Do you think I could talk to you and maybe you can help me out if you think it's right? If you are just that open and honest, you're going to fare a lot better than sending that War and Peace thing out of nowhere. Or, we connected 2 years ago, you never said a word to me. Now all of a sudden you need my help. Like, right? Total different game. Now, if I've known Trevor for a while, we may not have talked, but he engages with my posts and this and that, and then he hits me out of the blue. All right, Trevor, yeah, let's talk. I
Okay.
At least have knowledge of you.
You hit on 2 points there. And one is, I've actually gotten messages from people that say, hey, my friend applied for this role. Can you help him out? And this is somebody I don't even know that had just connected with me. So they want me to help their friend that I don't even know, that's a third party.
I've only had that once. I could say I've only had that once.
Or the, hey, I see you worked, I applied for this role. Can you help me? And never mention what the role is, where the organization is, what you're about, or anything. And John hit on something very important. Being active in the comments of people's content. Yeah. Because if you're going after a targeted company, finding the HR person in that organization that posts content and commenting with thoughtful, intelligent comments You don't do it every day, but twice a week if they post it. After the third, fourth comment, you can send them a message and a connection and just say, hey, I really enjoy your content. Can we talk? And I can tell you myself, if I see you in the comments, I am way more likely to give you my time because I can see that you have thoughts and I can see that you're intelligent, or hopefully at least. If you're a troll and baiting and just doing dumb stuff, that tells me everything I need to know about you too.
Yeah. Well, and so my best practice, and it might not work for everybody, it did work for me for 2 jobs in a row, is that when I found jobs that I was applying for on LinkedIn, I applied for it, but it actually had the person who put that job posting up listed right there. And immediately I just applied, and I kept it short and sweet. I didn't put war and peace in there, as John would say, but I did say, I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I applied for this position, and I noticed that you're the one that posted it. If a conversation makes sense, let me know. And I left it at that. And I'll be honest with you, the first time I was applying for a ton of positions, I didn't get a response from somebody until I started doing things like that. And then the next job that I got, literally the third position that I applied for, I got an interview and got hired after that. So, I mean, that is not necessarily going to work for everybody for every single situation. And it depends on what your motivation is while you're typing that message to that person. Don't be weird. Don't be wordy. Don't be any of those things.
Clear and concise. Just like AJ. Hey, I applied for it. I thought it was you. If a clean, it's simple, it's short, to the point.
Here's my generic response is, if you send me something that takes me more than 30 seconds to read, I'll flag it as unread, and I'll get back to it sometime this week when I've got time to focus on reading what you wrote.
Sometimes.
But I mean, I'm just saying, like, all of our inboxes are probably flooded with messages from both friends, not friends, unsolicited, random things, all the different stuff that everybody's inboxes get flooded with. And when you put yourself out there publicly, it's almost like it's a flag to say, hey, message me. And that's okay. But when I get a whole, as John put it, a War and Peace novel of a message, I want to read it, but I also know that's going to take my full attention as opposed to half of my attention. And if it takes half of my attention to read it, get the gist of it, and respond accordingly, you're going to get a response a whole lot faster.
Oh, yeah. And actually, Trevor, I want to ask you a question, related but unrelated, because I want to hear your opinion on this. I personally feel that right now, some of the best organizations, their HR and hiring people are very active on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And the best part about, what the best part about LinkedIn is? If you go find the recruiter pocket or the HR pocket of LinkedIn, because there are pockets of every profession on LinkedIn if you find it. There are so many recruiters that are actually telling you what to do and what not to do for whatever roles you're looking for. Like LinkedIn, yes, there's a lot of nonsense on there. There's a lot of stupidity. There's a lot of clickbait. But if you know where to look for things and you know who, and you just need one name, like if you look for whatever you're looking for, search for that one person that's the mover and shaker of that industry, and then go to their comments. The people that are commenting are the people that are going to be active. And then those are the people you talk to, because you may be going after the big fish with 100,000 followers and they're the influential person, but everybody else has content to give too. And the comments are where the thoughts and the conversation start.
Well, so I would actually like to circle back to, I can't remember who asked the question, but why qualified military people are not getting hired in these positions. There's one thing that I noticed, and I served almost 2 decades in the military, and John, I know you did too. Trevor, a little less, but I mean, we all have the experience of applying for these jobs after we get out of the military. The one thing that I noticed is that when you're reading these job descriptions, even though I may have served an entire career in operations, if you go to an operations manager, you read that joker and go, oh my God, I don't think I have done any of that stuff.
Because it's not the important things that they want. It's whatever was agreed on by the least. That's the least important stuff.
Right.
Yes.
But us veterans, we get in our head and we miss some of these opportunities because we don't even try. We look at it just like Trevor said when he reads his messages in his inbox. We look at it, we briefly scan it, and then we move on.
Yep.
So
Like,
I think, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll give you how I look at jobs. Number one is I look at the organization because I'm in a position in my career where, with my business and everything that I'm doing, if I'm gonna kind of put that on ice, the organization matters to me as well as the title.
Yeah,
but
as it should.
But when I was looking for roles, one of the first things I would do is scroll all the way down to requirements, because the requirements they're going to list all this stuff that they want you to do, but the requirements tell you what it is that they are screening for.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a PMP if you're a project manager? No? All right, don't apply because you're wasting your time.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a PMP, do you have a bachelor's degree? Do you have a master's degree? If it says MBA or equivalent master's, okay, a master's in anything else probably should suffice. But
Mm-hmm.
these are the filtering criteria that they use in those ATS systems. And, I can't stress this enough that the minimum requirements are what gets you through the screening.
Mm-hmm.
The desired requirements, preferred requirements, whatever term you're using, that is where you get ranked near the top, is if you have those. And be prepared to talk about how you expedite those skill sets and those tools. Because if you don't have the preferred, odds are somebody else who's applying does. And that doesn't go for military. That goes for anybody.
Yeah.
And actually, if you guys don't mind, I just randomly pulled up a job posting on LinkedIn, right? And to pretty much back up what Trevor's saying, because this is some of these key words that your resume needs to tell the story of to even get in the door. So this one is a business development manager for Red Frog Solutions. And so under the requirements, bachelor's degree preferred, minimum of 10 years business development, capture management, or strategic growth experience within the defense industry. Demonstrated success identifying, developing, and winning DoD business. Strong customer relations with U.S. Army and other DoD organizations. Strong understanding of government contracting, acquisition process, and current defense procurement trends. And there's a bunch more, right?
So, John, let me ask you this then. I've been doing business development in web sales for 20 years. I've exceeded my quota for every one of those years, shattered the ceilings, capped out on my commissions, everything. Made my company grow exponentially. Am I qualified for that role?
Probably not, unless it was a DoD agency, unless it was a government contract agency, or unless you could speak to any one of those things.
Exactly. And that is what we miss, because
Mm-hmm.
because as we get out, we're all, at least 15 years ago when I got out, we were all told, you're rock stars. Everyone wants you, especially your military. Everyone loves America. Everyone loves the soldier. The problem is that a military person probably would be a good fit for that role if they understood, if they were in procurement, contracting of some sorts like that, because guess what? They've dealt with the military. They've dealt with the bureaucracy of the DoD, and they've dealt with contracting in their job in the military.
Mm-hmm.
That is a perfect role for a contracting officer, S4 type person. But if you're anything other than that, you don't qualify and move on. Target the roles that fit your skills. And I think that's a big gap that people have too, is we look at military and we say, oh, we can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can, but the company wants us to do certain things and showcase that we can do them well before they will pay us.
Yep.
And
one thing I will add, like in this case, right, it said U.S. Army and other DoD organizations. You're going to have a harder time if you came from the Navy or the Air Force going for this role. They are like systems, but you have to be able to plead the case of why Air Force guy or Navy guy or Coast Guard guy could handle this. So if you could speak to, hey, yes, I was Navy, but I've done these things with the Army. Now you're telling it directly to that. So you're saying, I have that relevant experience. I've done these things. I've gotten these certs. So that is all laid out to fill that requirement.
I could take that one step further. When I was working for Booz Allen, I was working at Fort Knox on an Army program. We dealt with uniformed military people as our customers.
Mm-hmm.
We also dealt with civilians. Having been in the Army, having been recently, well, within the last decade, discharged, that common bond of being able to talk to those people, the customer, is an inherent value in and of itself. Because if you put me in a Navy role, if you put me in a role with Department of the Navy, I'm going to be looking up rank charts for 6 months before I understand it, because the Navy in and of itself is weird with their like, I'm this grade, but I've got my job title and my rank together and all this stuff. But the idea is that it's a different language than what we are used to. And you've got to understand, when you're going for roles and jobs, don't play the numbers of shotgun approach. Target it. Be precise. Look for that 10-digit grid, not the 8 or the 6.
And the other thing is, for those of you out there who are searching for jobs, you need to be realistic as well in that knowledge gap for other jobs. So you have to be very cognitive of this job posting. How does it relate to my actual skill set, my actual experience? And if there is a gap, and there may be, you got to be able to identify how you're going to close that gap fast, right? Because a lot, especially the higher up the ladder you go in any industry, any organization, the higher up, the less time and resource they're going to waste getting you caught up. If you're not already up there close to that level, they're not going to waste time.
Another thing to think about too is, when I said when I got out of the military, my first job was making like $8 an hour telling student athletes to be quiet in the Auburn Student Athlete Library. And I got out with a master's degree. I had a clearance, and I thought I was going to go make 6 figures easy, but I didn't. And one of the things that it took me was realizing, you may be top dog in the military, whatever rank you are. Be prepared to take 1 to 2 steps backwards in your career to learn how the civilian world operates, because it does not operate the same way. And they are not going to just say, oh, you were this pay grade over here in this rank, we'll just lateral you over to a management role because you were a manager in the military. No, because there are 3 other people who have been working 10 years to get that job while you were in the military that know those systems inside and out, and you cannot compete with that.
And you just hurt a bunch of colonels and sergeant majors' feelings.
And I don't care, because it's the truth.
It is the truth.
And realistically, I think the longer we stay in, the more we feel dedicated to our already current mission. And if you're looking for a higher paying job, those jobs don't hire in 10 days or 20 days, or sometimes even 2 or 3 months. And so they really screen candidates and look, and they go through the internet process, the interview process for these people, because they want to make sure they get the right person. So if you're that person who's still on active duty and you are dedicated to the mission, and you're gonna work and forget about everything else all the way up until the day that you separate from the military, you're shooting yourself in the foot if you're trying to make the same amount when you get out, because you need to dedicate some time for people to start putting you through that interview process. Otherwise, you're going to end up having to, if you need that income right away, because we all know when we get out, it doesn't matter if we end up going for VA disability or we do retire from the military. You don't always get paid right away after you separate, unless you have a lot of terminal leave or something like that. It might take a little while for that paycheck to catch up with you. So if you need that money right away, you might have to settle for something that's going to set you back.
Well, and to that point,
to the side of that real quick is also, you guys should already be starting, ideally right 2 or more years out. You need to identify what you want to be doing, where you wanting to go and already start filling those educational gaps, right?
Mhm.
Either whether it's a certification process, if you're in the trades like your welders, your machinists, your electricians, I guarantee you have some great skills, but you're not nationally certified yet. And because you're usually missing the one piece where you had an actual, like for the welders, an AWS instructor come out and validate you. So if you're in these boats, go figure out where the
And
gap is and go get it while you're in, especially because the military will pay for it. And then that way you can really closely walk into that pay scale and that skill set. But if you're walking out blind without that civilian equivalent certification or degree or whatever, you're already going to be behind, and you're going to have to accept that.
Yeah.
One thing that sticks out to me about what you just said is, I was in, and I had a friend. He was a fueler. He drove fuel trucks. Like, he was certified to drive fuel trucks in the Army. And I was joking with him one day about, yeah, what are you going to do when you get out? Drive gas around in long hauls and stuff. He's like, I'm getting offers left and right for mid to high six figures because he's on a list of people who have some certain hazmat cert that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to get. So he's on that list because he's got it because he had to get it for being a fueler. And he was like, my job is made when I get out. All I got to do is say the word and offers are coming in. And he was right. But that's to John's point of, if you have that skill and you're wanting to continue that role, find out what you need on the outside, because the military and civilian do not operate on the same parallels. And when I was ready, my enlistment was up my contract was up at 7 years. And I had at about 5 years when I was at the airborne school, I had a decision point to make. Did I want to go to OCS and go career, or did I want to get out? And I chose to get out. And that's when I started the process of going to grad school and getting my master's.
Mm-hmm.
I actually graduated with my MBA on terminal leave. And I say all that because it was a 2-year plan of getting out and prepping for that. But I knew what I was going to do ahead of time. And I said, I'm going to get out and I'm going to use the Army's money to pay for this.
Mm-hmm. I highly recommend using the government's money to pay for that stuff, especially because it's even more expensive when you're out.
Well, the government paid for both of my master's degrees under the GI Bill.
The government, the government paid all mine with TA. I didn't even touch my GI Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, and there's so many resources that people do and don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not sure, once again, there are pockets on LinkedIn of people who talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
if you come to either mine, Trevor's, or JJ's blocks, we're part of those extended circles. So even if it's not us, you're going to see who we're interacting with, and you're going to find the exact person you need, or you hit us up and JJ will be like, oh yeah, you need to go talk to Greg, or you need to go talk to Bill.
Yeah. Well, here's where I've said this before, and I will maintain this until the day I die. Being a part of the military means you are in the most exclusive club on the planet. Because when you say, I was in the military, to somebody else who was in, you automatically have an in after they vet you to make sure that what you're saying is true. And then that's when you can go with, hey, John, I want to go work here. John will say, I don't know anybody. I don't work there. I don't know anybody, but maybe JJ does. Mm-hmm. And then JJ introduces, it's a we use the term force multiplier all the time. Having connections is a force multiplier, and being a super connector is. I can't tell you, JJ, how many times have I introduced you to people?
Quite a few.
Mm-hmm. And I'm selective of who I introduce to, because I view it as, while that's not my reputation on the line, I make sure that if I'm introducing somebody to somebody, they're not going to be a moron when they talk to them. It's a vetting process, but if you pass my screening, I'm going to assume John, I'm going to assume JJ's, then when you pass someone off to them, there's confidence in the other person knowing, oh, Trevor said this. Trevor said I should talk to this person. I probably should.
Yeah.
Or if at worst, I'll do a warm LinkedIn handoff. Be like,
exactly. But that's what I mean.
Hey JJ, here's Trevor. Like, this is what's going on. I couldn't help him. Do magic.
Yeah.
And then I just
Yep.
leave it at that.
Right.
And there are so many groups out there that this is their sole mission, is to get everybody connected. And just because, I can promise you, there is a 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon kill chain that can lead to anywhere you want to go if you go through the trouble of finding the people and asking them and asking and asking and asking.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to put in the effort to get there.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, if anybody watching either live or later on wants to be connected with somebody and they need help with any issue after separating, I mean, you don't even really have to be a vet. If you have a question, you can reach out to us. But we do really, really enjoy helping our fellow veterans, because navigating that separation process is not super easy, because everything is kind of spelled out for you while you're still serving. So, I mean, going into a landscape where you kind of have to FITFO, it's really just kind of a different landscape. So
But let me add one more thing to this, though. And that is on the introduction piece. I've seen it happen so many times. I will make an introduction to somebody because they say, hey, I want to meet this person, or hey, I want to find somebody that does X.
Mm-hmm.
And I know somebody. And then I introduce them.
And then
crickets. Exactly. And then I ask, and I follow up with the person because I'm almost positive I've done this at least once with you, John.
No, yeah.
And no, I'm saying somebody else that I introduced to you.
Yeah.
And then they don't respond. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't help you there.
Yeah. I've asked you that
Follow
too. Hey,
through
Trevor, that
matters.
guy. Hey, Trevor, that guy never answered. Do you want me to keep on reaching out to him? Because he's not answering anything.
and you know what my answer is? No. Let that person go stew and do whatever they're going to do. Because like I said, this is the part that nobody wants to do. It's the uncomfortable part. It's the difficult part. It's the awkward part. It's the having the conversation with a stranger. And that's why I say the military is the most exclusive club in the planet, because you've automatically got the icebreaker of, like, it happened this morning. I commented on somebody's post that's a veteran's post, sent somebody a connection request. He sent me a message, and then I joked with him about a few things, and I said, yeah, I can take the politeness filter off because you're a vet. And he's like, yes, please.
Yes.
And we were joking about a few things, and now in 3 messages, I've built that relationship up to where if I need something from them, I can ask.
Trauma bonding.
Yes, trauma bonding. So actually, one of our viewers, Jason, he asked a question about 5 minutes ago, but I think this would be a great way to kind of end, because we can all put our point of view out there. What's the takeaway every veteran should remember after today's discussion?
JJ, why don't you lead this off?
Yeah.
Well, we would always say in the military that, nobody looks out for you more than yourself. And so if you're separating from the military and your goal is to start a business, or your goal is to get a job, or whatever the case may be, learn about what you're trying to do before you get out, and like everyone already said, I couldn't have said it better than John and Trevor, make sure you're qualified to do that thing that you're trying to do. And it's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be time consuming, but doing the things is what's going to make you successful in whatever you're trying to do. So don't give up on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
I'll say, don't be afraid to experiment either, right? Go out there, talk to people, find your voice. But also, if you are starting the job search, but you're kind of not sure yet, there is nothing wrong with shooting one of these recruiters that you find on LinkedIn a message, or if you find a job posting and they do have the recruiter in there, just be like, hey, I'm curious about this. I would like an informal interview. And more times than not, they're going to give you that interview. And this is your chance to kind of figure it out, get some reps in, but understand what the job market as a whole, especially in your industry that you're looking for, is what they're looking for. And you can start feeling it out now So when you are ready to start applying, you're like, okay, I remember having these conversations with Stephanie and Tiffany and Greg and Mike. And so I felt it out. I understand. I figured out those certs I need or where I'm lacking, and you're able to go. So don't be afraid to go out there, experiment a little bit, make your own posts, interact with other people's posts, and start building it now. So when you do need it, you're already prepared.
I'll piggyback off of John's and add to it before I bring it. Before I say mine, and that is one thing everybody forgets. The communities are small, meaning that just because you don't want to go work at X company where Steve is the recruiter for, if he's active on LinkedIn, he knows recruiters elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows their professional peers. I've actually had this happen where I've been talking to a friend who's a recruiter, and I would be like, hey, I'm in the market, blah, blah, blah. And someone would say, oh, I know someone over here that's hiring. I know a recruiter over here that I can make the introduction to. And that tails into my point of start getting yourself comfortable being uncomfortable talking to strangers, talking to other people who speak another language than you. Because it doesn't matter if you've been out for 5 minutes or 50 or 5 years or 10 years. Human interaction does not change. Mm-hmm. Being able to carry on a conversation, being able to start a conversation, and being able to share cogent thoughts are the most valuable currency you can carry. I started posting before I started my business, before I started my podcast, because what my theory is that when a recruiter goes to my LinkedIn, because what's the first thing they do after they get your application and your resume? They go to your LinkedIn to see what do you talk about, if anything. Mm-hmm. If it's a ghost town, and then the next person up is posting all day long about the nuances of project management and the nuances of why do we call agile initiatives projects, when the reality is that by definition they are not a project because they do not have a finite start and finish point. That shows you can write, which is something that everybody looks for. That shows you have independent thought, and it shows that you're not afraid to put yourself out there a little bit. And all of those things are intangibles that somebody will look for in the hiring market. And they're looking for red flags. Are you posting political content? Are you just reposting memes from Instagram, or are you posting actual value add content? Mm-hmm. All these things, that's what they look for. They won't tell you it up front, but they will look for it. And one of the things I do right now, I was told I came up near the top of the list because I was active. And that's what caused this person to reach out to me. I've had a lot of opportunity in the deal that I've got with them, but because I was active, I came up near the top of the search for project managers, and that's what got me the opportunity in the conversation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what I say is, I'll wrap it up with best versus best known is the concept that I always bring up, because we can always talk about, there's in every industry, everywhere you go, somebody is always famous and they're terrible at what they do. Mm-hmm. But they're the best known. Like McDonald's is the best known hamburger on the planet, and it is a terrible burger. But any town you live in, everybody has their favorite hole in the wall place that makes the best burger in that town. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. But you're never going to find that same burger if you leave town.
Anywhere else.
Exactly. And that's the concept that you've got to balance, is being the best at what you do, but also being known for your competency and your skill set.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, we're at the top of the hour here, everybody. Thank you, too, for joining me for a conversation. Thank you for the up to 197 people that ended up watching today. And I appreciate you all for participating in the conversation, those ones who were bold enough to leave comments and questions and stuff like that. Make sure if you want to know when these things pop up, you got to subscribe. If you don't subscribe, you're not going to get the notification. So please do that. Otherwise, like, share, all that other stuff. If you thought it was good and important, Otherwise, wait till the stream is over, because I found out that when you go live, those comments disappear, especially on YouTube. Everywhere else they might stay, but YouTube they do not. And most
No,
people
they stay when you're watching it. If you're rewatching it, you'll see the live chat.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't figured that part out yet, because ever since for some reason I hit the algorithm, I'd never see those. Anyway, but leave a comment in there if you want us to follow up with one of us to follow up with you. If you want to reach out to John, or you want to reach out to Trevor, or if you want to talk to me, God forbid, and I don't know why you'd want to do that, but feel free to do so. And thank you all for participating. Thank you for being here, John and Trevor, and we'll see you all next time.
See you guys next.
See ya.